Welcome to the Last Beer Show. What's up, Jason?
Hey, Wayne.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Want to turn off that music?
Oh, yeah. I was going to fade it out, like we meant to do it, but I'll turn it off, too.
What you getting into lately?
Well, you know me. Getting into lots of stuff. Actually, I just returned back from a trip to North Carolina where I picked up a bunch of stuff and I was able to drink a bunch of stuff up there. We've been doing a lot of shares up here.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I've been getting into a lot of stuff. We've been drinking a lot of, I noticed that we've started getting into a lot more stouts. So we've been drinking a lot more Cycle, J. Wakefield, a lot more Westbrook stouts. Monday Night Brewing just opened recently. They opened their garage. And so they had several really amazing stouts, including Tears of My Enemies On, which is one of my all-time favorite beers. So I think I've been on the stouts and porters train here. But honestly, we've been drinking a lot of fresh IPAs, too, at the same time. So just a little bit of everything.
Yeah, those are happening right now.
Yeah.
That's cool. What
about you?
Not a lot. Been working a lot lately, so lightning... go light on the sauce when you're working late, exercising early, right? So,
yep.
Some cellared stuff and barrel-aged stuff from local favorites, Wild Heaven and a couple, 3 taverns. I mean, it's just easy to pop in on my way home from work and grab a few.
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
Which is great, try to support local. And a few other bottles here or there, some international stuff. I was at Epcot.
Huge craft beer mecca.
Yeah.
Huge craft beer mecca.
You're exaggerating, but I get the point. So, no, but they did have some fun stuff. I had a pomegranate Hefeweizen, which I thought was going to be too sweet, but it was actually really, really solid. I found an excuse to have the family check in with yet another princess in the area so I could slip out and go do a little beer crawl. A second helping maybe or that.
Yeah.
And a couple of things that they had from some Pilsners and from, Norway. And Iceland and some of the stuff that I thought was really kind of, you don't normally get your hands on, which was cool. Yeah, some of it was just run-of-the-mill, Van Stefaner and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're all drinking right now, right? We're getting into Oktoberfest type beers and lagers and things like that. I've actually been drinking a lot of, just because I went to Nashville 2 weekends in a row, so I ended up with a lot of Bearded Iris. So I've been drinking a lot of Bearded Iris, and then Creature Comforts released Crescendo and Duende again. And so I've been drinking that, and then also Reformation's Orin I went back to again. We had an event on Thursday, and I picked up a 6-pack and went back into Orin, which is I think it's just a really good kind of citrusy IPA, which I really enjoy. So that's kind of what I've been into now outside of stouts.
If anything, I'm more excited for a couple of the bottles I recently got that I haven't opened yet. So it's a couple of Urban Family, a couple more things were sent in to me from a friend up in that corner of the country in the Seattle area, and I'm really excited to open those.
What's really awesome,
are killing it with the fruited.
Urban Family is they do the fruited the purple one that they do, which is purple drink one, which is really crazy good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But we actually opened up a bottle earlier that I want to mention because it was freaking delicious. It was the Goat's Ascension from Abbey the Holy Ghost, which is a local brewery here in Atlanta, good. Which was a Belgian aged in port, and it was freaking.
We're going to hear a little bit more from
silky.
them in a second, aren't we?
We are actually.
We got some guests.
We do actually, and then
drinking on right now is a craft ginger ale, non-alcoholic.
It is.
The nose is super gingery. I was like, I'm getting myself into some trouble.
Yeah.
And
so
once you drink it, it's actually sweet. It's pretty well balanced. It's good. Really
good. Just for all fairness. Just for all fairness, Brad Shell, who opened and runs Unknown Brewing, is my cousin, and I was able to visit him in the brewery on Sunday. It's the first time I've been able to be up there and see his brewery. And it's pretty cool because he's my cousin. He grew up in Stockbridge.
So you're not unbiased, though. So
I am non-biased. He started at Sweetwater, and then they asked him to. He started in production at Sweetwater, and then they asked him to help open Terrapin, and he helped open Terrapin, and then he got hired at Rogue and went to Rogue Brewing, and then became the brewmaster at Fish Brewing in Olympia, Washington, and now has opened up his own brewery in Charlotte, Unknown Brewing, and so. it's just kind of cool to support him now that I'm on this side of the brewery side.
I get that.
Yep.
Cool. So our guests, let's introduce. Bum, bum. I don't have music for the guests specifically, but going in a circle, not that anyone except for us can see that, would be Kathy Davis, Jessica Miller, and Zuri Coleman. And I would like you each to take a couple of moments and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And do you want us to tell about our history in craft beer?
Yes, the whole shebang.
The whole shebang.
Yep.
But I don't want it there.
Dig in deep.
So I'm Kathy Davis. I'm the owner, operator, brewmaster, Jill of all trades at Abbey of the Holy Goats. We've been open for about 1.5 years now. And I got into craft brewing. It's a long story, but briefly, I grew up in New Orleans for a brief period and drank a Dixie beer at Mardi Gras when I was 4, and it was all over. Just kidding.
At 4.
At 4.
That's awesome.
So, no, my father specifically was very influential in me getting into craft beer. He was really open for me to drink beer and really explore the flavors of it early on. And right out of high school, I became a classically trained chef and got burnt out extremely early in my profession and decided that instead of being a chef, I wanted to be a Buddhist nun. So I took lay vows and was leaving for Nova Scotia. And in 2 weeks, my best friend took me to a brand new pub that had just opened in Decatur called Brickstore Pub. And
know it well.
Yeah, convinced me not to go to Nova Scotia. So I revoked my vows and stayed here in Atlanta and got really into craft beer. And 10 years later, instead of buying a goat farm in Maine, I opened a brewery. So I went back to Georgia State, worked on my business plan to open the brewery, and started. I mean, I've been brewing beer for over 15 years now, and my parents got me into brewing. Consequently, my parents gave me a brew kit in my late 20s. I am nowhere close to being in 20s anymore. So I started brewing beer and won first place in the first beer I ever designed, which is our Goats in the Garden saison. So. Brief history.
It's something of note that she mentioned, though, that I think is really notable would be, I wonder how many people have their careers somehow in Atlanta, have their careers somehow attached to Brickstore in some way, form, or fashion.
They had just opened when I went there. So I was a chef in Decatur and lived in Decatur, and we were like, what is this place? We could walk to it from our... I lived with 6 people because even then it wasn't cheap in the mid-90s. So, walked to the Brickstore Pub and drank a lot of beer. Right. It was fantastic.
Awesome.
I would love that. I would love that to be everyone's really first good experience with beer. I mean, think about how much better our world would be.
It wasn't my first experience, but I did live across the street from Brickstore for about 3-4 years.
You were living in the square?
In the square. In a condo.
Oh.
It was...
Not in a tent.
Trouble. It was awesome, but it was trouble. Jessica, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
My name is Jessica Miller. I'm with Reformation Brewery. I'm the marketing manager there. We'll be celebrating our 4-year anniversary this October, and I've been there for about a little over 2 of those years. My start in craft beer came from a small local brewery that opened near us in Kennesaw. You may know it, Burn Hickory Brewery.
Familiar? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm right there.
Yeah, I actually didn't know really anything about the craft beer scene. I was primarily a wine drinker, aside from the English style beers that my mother-in-law, who's from across the pond, introduced me to, and I loved those styles. But I had no idea what was going on in American craft beer until Burn Hickory. So once I discovered what was happening, I wanted to know everything about it, and went down and visited as many breweries as I could. I became a beer blogger. I had transitioned from being an English teacher in middle school to being a stay-at-home mom, and discovered that that was not the right decision for me or my family.
Wow.
So with a lot of creative energy and time on my hands and a flexible schedule from my partner, I was able to be a full-time beer blogger for a few years with the ultimate goal of moving into the industry. Right. And then when Reformation was looking, I was asking, and that's history for that.
Great match.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And Zuri, what's up?
Nothing much. I'm Zuri. I'm one of the brewers at Second Self Beer Company. And my start in brewing was a little bit different from everyone at the tables. So I started at Second Self in the tasting room. I had just graduated college in 2014, and I just needed a job while I was looking for a job, because looking for a job is a job in itself. Yeah. So I was just in the tasting room pouring whenever they needed help. From March until July, they were hiring a keg washer. And I was like, well, I'm still looking for a job, and this is more money and still a job. So I started washing kegs. And then from July until about October, they were like, oh, do you want to learn how to do cellar work? And I was like, I mean, yeah, sure. That's awesome. I'd love to learn how to do cellar work. I love beer. So I did cellar work for about a year again after that. And then they were like, well, do you want to learn how to brew? And I was like, that's the dream.
Yeah, once you're in it. Wait.
Do I want to breathe oxygen?
So I started on the brew house last October. And then this past January, I started at the American Brewers Guild. And I'm just about done with classes with that. Classes wrapped up at the end of July, and this coming Monday, I'm actually going to Sweetwater to practice cell counting and such, because they have like a full-size lab. So I'm doing all my lab work on Monday, and then I'll have my final in the next coming weeks, and hopefully I'll be a brewer in practice and on paper. So
that's awesome. Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congrats. When that goes through, send us a note, and we'll
give you a shout out,
because that may go through before this even goes November 1st.
We may be able to add that to the to the
might be able to just cut in. Who knows? That'd be exciting.
We should say also what we've been drinking. We should catch up on what we've been drinking. So we just got done drinking Treehouse's Haze. So we had a fresh can of that. We drank one of the cans that I mentioned a little bit ago, Reformation's Orin. Mm-hmm. We also drank Creature Comfort's Crescendo, and then we drank a burial. We drank a burial bottle. I don't really remember the name of it. And then we haven't drank that yet.
I had the Thai wheat.
Oh, yeah, the Thai wheat. We did have the Thai wheat. Yeah. That's right. Well, we're
Second Self Thai wheat.
Like 12. We're on like 12 beers at this point. But we drank the Thai wheat from Second Self.
There's 5 of us. It's not even that much beer.
Well, I mean, but we started at 7, so we've had a lot.
Well, then this one should get more interesting earlier than usual.
Yeah, well, it's interesting now.
So what keeps? Let me start out by opening up, to the forum and saying what keeps you interested ongoing in craft beer in general. And be more specific, but in general, like what are the new things that you uncover about it that keep you excited about it?
I just love the different flavors that people are coming up with. I mean, food is kind of boring. I mean, there's not like a lot of new foods coming out. I mean, there's like new plates and stuff.
We might have a fight between
I do feel like, with craft beer, people are becoming a lot more creative with the beer that's being put out. I mean, I know I'm only like 25, but I feel like there's been an explosion of craft beer in the few years I've been drinking. Because I know when I try to talk to my brother, who's 35, about beer and craft beer and drinking, he likes to stick to like Dos Equis and Corona and Bud, because that was like what was big in the market when he turned 21. But now I'm younger. I'm like, oh, there's like all these different things.
It's exploded at a rate that is a little bit different than...
Yeah, beer's not just beer anymore. It's just, there's so many more things going on with it than before.
Cool.
For me, it's interesting to see, like, we get so wrapped up in our industry, we sort of take it for granted that everyone knows what we know and has the same information. From the marketing standpoint, what's interesting is there's always someone new to introduce the experience to, that may have written off beer as an enjoyable experience because they believe that beer is a certain thing. And for me, that's where my awakening happened is, for me in my mind, beer was a certain thing and I didn't like that thing. And then when I discovered what American craft beer is today, I was like so excited. So there's still people having that awakening every day. And to me, that's what keeps me excited.
I would argue it's as deep as wine now.
Yeah. And so that's another area where I think there's a lot of, going to be a lot of new innovation and overlap is between, the wine and craft spirits and then the craft beer drinkers. So craft beer, craft spirits, craft wine, craft beer, just sort of that higher level quality, beverage that all those consumers are seeking.
Right. So from a marketing standpoint, it's like the category wars has begun.
I don't know if it's necessarily a war, but as much as an opportunity.
Cool.
So
yeah, I see that.
For me, if you look at the poster behind all of you, there's so many flavors to be had in craft beer. To your point, Jessica, is wine has 300 identifiable flavors. Beer can have upwards of 3,000. Wow. So I think as a craft beer industry, we're just scratching the surface. I mean, we have a lot more leeway as opposed to wine, even a lot of liquors that we can put whatever we want. Really, I mean, you have obviously the German purity laws and what you can put into beer, but we're not in Germany.
No.
So we can add whatever we want, whether it's chanterelle mushrooms, like I do a Belgian strong with chanterelle mushrooms, or, adding some weird South American fruit that I just found out about. And it's how those flavors really pair well with food. So to your point, I mean, food is food, but at the same time is how do you bring out more flavors in that food, or how does that food bring out more flavors in the beer? So what all the beer that I design or we brew it at Abbey is all designed around food. So what is that flavor in that Dougal in the Unholy Goat? How does that bring out that flavor in the roasted duck that I love to pair with that beer?
Right.
So that's really what drives me about the industry.
There's more complexity in the fermentables and in the fermenters like the yeast and stuff like that than those other beverage categories, I suppose.
Right. I mean, there's one way to distill vodka. There's one way to make wine.
Right.
With beer, I mean, you have all these variables in there. How high of a temperature are you fermenting at? I mean, what yeast are you using and how are you treating that yeast? I mean, if you're using a Belgian yeast and only fermenting at 68 degrees, are you really getting the proper flavor profile out of that yeast? And if you take it up to 90 degrees, oh my God, people will freak out if you say, hey, we ferment our beer at 90 degrees. You're going to get very different flavor profiles out of that. And some of these flavors that you would never have in beer unless you tried that.
Right.
So it's really a wide open category right now where you can try so many things and get so many flavors out of it. And I think that's what makes beer so special is that it's so different than any other alcoholic beverage.
Right.
Yeah, I actually think like one of the next waves that we're going to see as we go beyond ingredients itself is actually yeasts and malts. Different malts and different yeasts and kind of a focus on yeasts.
I think malts and hops are both localizing more and more to some degree. We've seen a lot of evidence of that. We know a couple people who are starting farms specifically for those ingredients.
And you've grown hops yourself.
Yeah, I do. It's not particularly difficult.
Yeah, but I think that right now we're in an IPA renaissance right now where we're all about IPAs. Obviously, that's kind of what everybody's talking about. So people are learning about hops. I just think that yeast and malts are the next kind of wave of kind of where we're going to go to from there.
I love the yeast game. I mean,
It's
the wild yeast
game.
and some of these things and how even similar strains vary in flavor from region to region so much, it's just going to open up a lot of opportunity for.
But I know that Kathy has made she's made a Belgian IPA. Mm-hmm. So if you think about like a Belgian IPA,
I've had it.
So
it's awesome.
So good.
Yeah, so start throwing take an IPA or take a non-traditional style and throw a Belgian yeast in it. Or, that's what I mean by like experimenting with yeast. I mean, like even taking traditional styles like stouts and seeing what a Belgian yeast would taste like in a white stout, that actually would be really good now that I think about it.
I get it. I mean, that's why I started homebrewing. It was before the legal limit, the alcohol ceiling was raised in the state we live in from 6 to 14, right? I think it was 6.4 or some thing like that. Mm-hmm. So before that was, changed, the choices were pretty slim. So it was like, well, there's all these styles I want to try. I'll just homebrew them. I'm going to figure out how to make all these things that are, flavored a bit differently. But they weren't brown ales with peach, right? They weren't
exactly.
different types of things you could do with nuts and all.
Pale ale with green coffee,
Yeah, it's amazing.
mushrooms and beer.
Mushrooms in beer. I haven't had
think
that one. I want
it's
to come by and try that.
White Labs, the yeast manufacturer, one of their locations, they will brew the same beer with like all their different strains of yeast, and I think that's also cool.
Which is so cool.
So you can be like, oh, like yeast matters.
I would
Like,
actually love to
totally
do that.
matters.
I'd actually like to brew a wort and then break it up into 5 different batches and then use different yeast to do
I did
it.
the.
We do that.
Do you?
So especially when
We should all go to her place then.
So a big thing that
the
we're
bus.
doing right now is trying to collect some wild yeast and really develop that into. We have a house strain that we use, but also what we're trying to experiment with a lot of local stuff. So what we're doing is. In the spring, we'll gather a bunch of different kinds of blossoms off trees that are over in our local area and throw them in different worts that we've brewed the same grain bill. It's a very mild grain bill. It's all Pilsen base. And throw that in there and not necessarily even plate it, but we'll see what happens to the wort. So at the end of that, we taste it. Hey, this is disgusting, or this is really good. And then I'll actually put it on a pastry dish at that point, and then we'll refine it down to figure out what is really making this beer taste so good.
Cool.
Or we'll send it off to a lab because I
Send it off to a lab.
really don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I bought like the McKellar single hop series. They did that with hops. They broke it up into 19 batches and then single hopped each in every one of them and sold them all individually. And some friends and I chased around town and bought all the bottles and just had a huge tasting. We had like giant paper easel and we had markers and we were writing down all the time. It was so nerdy. So nerdy, and it was amazing.
Fun,
do that
though.
too with
Sounds
hops.
fun.
Yeah.
So since when we first started when I first opened the brewery and we were commercially brewing for the first time, I went to order hops. And all these beers that I designed for the last 10, 15 years, I couldn't get any of the hops until what they told me was 2020. This was in 2015, 2016.
A couple of years ago, there were some hops in serious short supply.
Yeah,
I remember
there were.
you couldn't find Amarillo. Some of the things you just couldn't get.
So I got all experimental hops. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with these? I don't know if they're going to work. Right. So we had to brew a bunch of beer. And to this day, I still like getting hops from a bunch of smaller farmers and trying it out as a single hop with the same grain bill.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cool. So you're going to bring some of those samples by, or?
We drink them too fast.
Damn it.
Dang it.
I'm trying, Jason. I'm trying.
Always miss it. Always like a day behind.
Always surprised me. Never a bride.
Never
Is that what you're going to say?
Never grew.
All right. So Jason wants to get into the meat of it
Yeah,
here.
let's get in the meat of it. Let's dish in. I feel
Have
like
you seen, actually, let me throw in a warm up. Have you seen that new Smuttynose brewed specifically for women in it has all the herbs used in
the
teeth, the
menopausal
menopausal
one? Yeah.
beers.
Yeah, I
saw
think
that.
I saw someone post that on the Pink Boots Society
Mhm,
page,
that's
and I was
right.
just like, really?
I saw that and I was like, okay, I realized this is serious, medical and physical transition. And I know that there are teas, I have a mother. I get it.
Hey, I'm not too far off on that.
All right. So we'll tread lightly, but,
it's Portsmouth Brewing.
Portsmouth.
It's Portsmouth Brewery, and it's called Libeeration, which is an empowering gruit, the first craft beer brewed for menopausal women. It's high time this overlooked demographic gets some attention.
I mean, it's a pretty small target, I guess, if you're going to target narrow.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
Target very narrow.
it's
Very narrow.
It's
Well, if 50% of
says-
society reaches that age at some point.
It says our team came up with ingredients believed to relieve symptoms like sleeplessness, hot flashes, and mood swings. We want to shift the mentality from focusing on the negative aspects of this stage in life to celebrating the liberating aspects.
I
wonder
Was this
how they
crafted
get
by a bunch of
around-
dudes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, one of the owners of the brewery and their creative director is a
The
woman.
co-owner is actually a female, Joanne Francis.
And they spent 6 years perfecting the
So this is
herbal
interesting.
blend.
And you mentioned
So,
Smuttynose. This says Joanne Francis is the creative owner and co-owns the Portsmouth Brewery and Smuttynose Brewing.
That's where I got my
That's
stars
exactly
crossed.
right, with her
Sorry.
longtime partner, Peter Eggleston.
In my defense, I read that like yesterday.
And so it was actually her idea, I should say that, because it says in here that she first floated the idea of a brew for menopausal women 6 years ago. The reaction from her staff was nothing short of disgust and horror. Can you imagine?
All the dudes that carry the grain bags across the brewing floor were disgusted.
Like, what? I don't want to talk about
They're like,
menopause.
that's gross.
Well, aside from the emotional reaction, there's like, how do you market something as being like a medical, isn't there? Aren't there?
Yeah.
The
What is-
FDA has
Well, it's
strict
herbal,
rules
though.
around that.
They don't have to be. There are all kinds of
No,
herbal
they
supplements that
don't.
don't
All
have to
right.
be FDA.
Never mind.
No.
But it depends on the herbs. You might have to get a formula
Don't you have to
approved.
say, like,
There's a level of specificity.
These
Yeah.
claims
Yeah.
have not
You
been
can avoid
proven
it.
by the
or something
FDA.
like that.
I think you
says
just
what it
can't be
is.
too specific about what it.
It says what it is. It says motherwort, lemon balm, chamomile, stinging nettle, mugwort, rose, chickweed, and damiana.
Stinging nettle, man, that's the shit right there.
Yeah, for chamomile. So not only is it good for menopausal women, but guys that just need to sleep.
Don't walk through it though. Like in
Chamomile?
England, stinging nettle is everywhere.
Oh yeah,
and it
It
does.
stings.
That bitch stings.
And chickweed, it'll make you itch.
and mugwort. That's like a Harry Potter thing, right?
I don't know. But the more,
Yeah, mugwort's actually used in Chinese medicine.
Oh,
the
then
more
there
you talk
go.
about this, the least I want to try it.
Yeah.
So, my sister and brother-in-law actually own a brew pub up in Tennessee. It's called the Green Dragon. Shout out.
Green Dragon.
Nice, yeah.
It's a Lord of the Rings theme pub. But they gave me a book years ago. It's Medicinal Beers. And if you haven't read that as a brewer, you must. Fascinating beer book. But yeah, they use a lot of interesting ingredients in it. And I
Right.
mean, as someone that likes to brew interesting ingredient beers, like with truffles and mushrooms.
Yeah,
and-
there's definitely a long history of that. Like there's that book, Herbal and Healing Beers or something like that. It's green, big book.
yeah.
Really?
It's really fascinating. That was one of my favorite reads in the last year.
It's really interesting. I mean, if you look at the history of beer, who brewed beer? I mean, women brewed it up until the Catholics took it over in the 12th century.
Right,
So, and still alewives brewed up until about the 16th, 17th century.
right.
So I'm looking at the
the-
website, and
the water
obviously
would make
they've
you
got a
sick.
wall of women there. And I bet you if you ask that wall of women what they thought about this beer, they'd probably think that's pretty rad, right?
Yeah, I
Because they
mean,
look
the
pretty
cool
excited
thing
about
about
it.
beer is that everyone is free to kind of make their own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone belongs somewhere, and why not there? I mean, you get to choose, so I think it's cool.
Yeah.
From a business standpoint and a marketing standpoint, women make up the fastest growing segment in craft beer.
It's true.
Yeah, we want to talk about that because
That's one of my
I think the numbers
questions.
right now are like 25%, which doesn't seem accurate.
I
to
can't.
me.
No, that's an internet number. I
Because if I
cannot
go to Creature
corroborate.
Comforts, it doesn't seem like
But
25%.
that's up from previous
Right.
years where it was like
So what do you think it is now?
6%.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
What do you think it is now?
So in my tasting room, in our tasting hall, actually half the people that come in are usually women.
That's what I see at Creature Comforts when I go there. And
Yeah.
I use that as an example because it's the largest segment of people of the breweries that I attend.
Right.
Creature Comforts is slam packed. And if you look at it, it's predominantly half and half, which I find amazing because it's a college town and they're super craft nerdy, right? So it's not a fratty place, right?
Right.
It's a kind of diverse.
I think it's going to vary from brewery to brewery to some degree.
And our demographic too, where we're located, we're truly a destination style brewery. We're not close to anything.
right.
So, and the fact that we are woman owned and we are in an older demographic, even with that, I mean, half of the people that come in are over the age of 35. And then you add women into that.
Right.
It's just that what I see is very different than I think if you went down to Second Self, which is close to Georgia Tech,
Right.
you're going to see a very different demographic come through.
Yeah, it's probably a little less than half, probably like 35 or 40% women coming through Second Self. On the weekends, it does pick up a bit more, but during the weeks, definitely mostly guys getting off work, stopping by for a drink with their friends.
Right.
What are the percentages of college? What's the ratio of college students considering where you're at? Is it pretty high?
Yeah, they mostly seem like young adults.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're in college or not, but probably close to around my age.
So Second Self, which is a brewery here in Atlanta, they're probably about 5-10 minutes from Georgia Tech University, which is obviously a very large university, which has a very diverse audience. I would say
student body,
student body.
And our founders went to Tech.
Yeah, they did actually. Jason Santamaria. So I use Jason because I know Jason, but I know that if I think about that. Again, that audience that would be there would be different than because we're in Alpharetta, which is a destination like Roswell.
It's
and
also
a destination
the suburbs.
like Woodstock, although Woodstock is
more
definitely
people
more family friendly.
that have families.
We see a lot of families. Our demographic is pretty broad. It's younger but not college age necessarily. More established families. A little more of a mature drinker, I would say, but not necessarily older. And like at least half, if not more than 50%. If you look at our analytics as far as who follows us and compare that to who actually comes to the brewery, it's a little more than half women. It's predominantly women. If I had to, give you a number, it's over 50%. So that's interesting to see, just because your question earlier before we got started on this was, I think you sent us questions. Maybe I was skipping ahead. I'm probably skipping ahead a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Just about
what can breweries do?
Like what breweries do to create a culture. Was that the question?
Yep. Basically, the question was, what are some ways that breweries can work to make sure women are valued and respected in their craft beer experience on the whole, which is, and a lot of it has to do with marketing and the events that you create, right?
Right. Yeah. And I was looking at that question and I was thinking about, I don't know if it's so much what you do so much as what you don't do.
Right.
Exactly.
It's like if you've got a bunch of like misogynistic labels and names and you create a real brosive environment, that's going to turn some people away, right? Just like...
Right. Like who's invited to the table? Like you set the table and everyone's standing there waiting. And does everyone have a seat? Like who's invited by default?
Right.
But now that I'm on the marketing end of it, I think it's actually both of those things. Because I noticed that I actually started to make sure that I included women in a lot more of our photos that we share and things like that, just because I wanted women to feel welcome.
Sure.
Like, it's not just guys weren't posting. It's not just a frat party. It's literally just like, it's a broad spectrum of people who enjoy our products. And so the things that I do are making sure that we do. And Reformation does a great job of doing a lot of family events. They do Harry Potter night. They do a lot of board game night stuff. Now, they do a lot to foster that family environment and community. And I think that there is some work that you have to do as well as what you don't do, which is not create this kind of... And actually, Kathy and I talked about this last week when she came by our brewery. We actually had this conversation about some of the things that we could do to make sure that, it doesn't just seem like the good old boys brewery, And I was actually challenged by what she said, which is why I was really excited about this night. Because honestly, our conversation even spurred me to think that there are things that we do or don't do that we probably haven't even thought about.
Mm-hmm. It's hard. Sometimes you don't see it. Right? You can only act in what is in your nature that is a reflection of your environment when you're coming up and as you learn and you open all those doors and hopefully you have the wherewithal to at least be cautious enough to know what you don't know or realize that there's an area that maybe you don't know enough or you're around people that may know more about something than you do. Then you have to tread carefully and lightly and take in experience and get feedback from the universe before you make a decision or you say something. We do it in micro ways every day, like to check out at the grocery store, to the bottle shop, to, closing down some beer bar somewhere, when we probably should have gone home hours prior. But it's like,
where's my Uber?
Exactly. So I mean, we do it in micro ways all the time, but in big ways when you're approaching a subject that maybe, I can't understand the reality of being female. I can't understand the reality of being Black. I can't understand the reality of being, severely disabled. Right. So all I can do is ask. Like, I want to know. I want to ask. I want to make sure that when I'm saying things or considering things or creating things, that the environment that's around me and what I'm making, how it's going to affect people, that feedback comes in before I do it. So because you don't want to upset people.
So to that point, being a female-owned brewery, when I first opened, Bray had an open river watch down in Augusta. So I was the first female-owned brewery in Georgia. one of 2 in the whole Southeast.
That's right.
So it was a pretty daunting experience, but I knew, because a tasting room in a brewery is always a reflection of the brand. This is home for a brewery. So what I really was intent about was, how do I make that tasting room feel like I'd want to come home to? So the tasting room to me had to feel like an abbey, because that's what we are. And it had to have a communal sense to it. So that's why we have the 26-foot table.
Gigantic table.
It's a 3-ton table.
It's amazing.
Made locally. But you had to sit down and you wanted to talk to people. So originally we didn't have TVs. The TV still does not play anything.
Right.
It's there for presentations, but short of that, I mean, people actually talk. The best thing that we had was a couple of weeks ago, we had 30 people. None of them knew each other.
Right.
Sit down and play a certain board game. I know you have it at Reformation. Secret Hitler.
Okay.
Oh, that's
I
a
can't
fun
say
one.
the name of that game.
I thought you were going to
But
say
it's
the
so
other
much
one,
fun.
the Black Box game, Cards Against Humanity.
Against
Oh, we have that one too.
Yeah.
But
don't
no,
think we
everyone
have
was
that.
playing Secret Hitler. It was 30 people that didn't know each other that were all playing Secret Hitler, and I think that really embodied what our brewery is about, is like communal
Stopping
experience.
Hitler.
Right. I stopped going to beer festivals. Like, the beer festivals we have are like nothing like Oktoberfest in Munich, right?
No, they're not.
Nothing. Whereas your table in the center of the room, there isn't much other seating. So people are forced to interact with each other at some point, even if it's just because they accidentally bumped into each other.
Right.
Right. The tables at Oktoberfest, there's literally no room to stand. The tables are butt up against each other, and they're these gigantic picnic tables, and you have to sit next to somebody you don't know.
And you have to sit right next
To them, on top of them. They are so tight, and it's all seating, the whole place. And our beer festivals are these distributor-decided tents that go in a circle on a giant sidewalk in a park or something like that, and you're walking around with a tiny tasting glass, and you get these little sips of everything, and that's really fun, but you don't interact with anybody except for the people you went with, really.
Well, and
Maybe
I
in the
think it
VIP tent, there's
depends
casks
on
and
who
stuff, and it
you
gets
are
dented.
what
Well,
you went
well,
for,
yeah,
because
exactly.
like that's how I met most of the people I know.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm
It's
saying.
through
Like,
beer. Like,
certain
I
people
think
are
it's an
always going to
awesome
thrive around other
connecting
people,
point.
regardless of how it's set up. But like, they're not forced to interact with each other. You can get through one of our beer festivals without
Yeah, you
interacting
could.
with anybody.
But why would you do that?
But you can't do that. Well, that's a
would you
marketing
do that?
person's
No,
point
I'm
of view.
serious. Like, I wasn't a marketer. I was just in it for the beer. Like,
know.
I mean, I fell into this influencer category. We go back to where we started from. And, you know, what inspired me to take the leap was seeing other women in the industry, you know, because it never really occurred to me, yeah, I could do that. It just sort of saw other people doing it. And I started this whole series where I was interviewing women, you know,
Yeah,
to
Hey
find out,
Beautiful.
where they were and what their history was and how they
Right.
got into beer and all of this kind of thing. And after a while, I was just kind of like, well, why isn't it me? It could be me because I see plenty of visibility is what I'm going for. Like, I think it's so important, no matter who you are, to be able to see someone who looks like you in the role that you could envision yourself. Like, how can you envision that? Like,
Right.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm pretty active on Twitter. And before we even connected through Jason, I specifically remember you liking and retweeting some of my tweets on Twitter. And I'm
funny.
like, oh, Jess from Reformation. Cool. I don't know who that is, but cheers.
Oh, you had a Twitter creeper.
I am a little
Well, she
bit of
kept
a Twitter
popping up my
people.
Facebook feed, and I'm like, who's this Jessica Miller? Because it's not my friend Jessica Miller. I don't know this person.
Oh, really?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I actually met her through social media as well, because
beer.
through beer and the Hey
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. I just thought it was cool what she did, and again, she was an influencer at
It's
that time.
sort of accidental. Like, I didn't even really know.
You're Hey Brutiful?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me.
She's kind of a big deal, actually.
I
was.
know.
She really is.
Well, I never-
She's still a big
No,
deal to
no.
me. She is.
I don't think I ever put the pieces together.
No.
Yeah, there you
It's
go.
not even a thing anymore.
Oh,
I
the
only
world.
recently put
It
the
is a-
pieces together.
It is a thing. It lives on.
No.
That's
No.
awesome.
It lives on in the
So
work that
follow
you do.
on Twitter. We'll get everybody's handles together. I guess
So
later, but-
interesting note
dying.
about Hey Beautiful is that I sort of set out to be semi-anonymous with that, and it worked to my benefit and also to my detriment. Like, where a lot of people don't really know who
If you don't use your real name,
is in
people think you're trolling
control.
when you
Like,
say something.
who
that
is
maybe-
it? And so a lot of the women I interviewed got approached as the owner, right? Like, no, I just interviewed them. And then, for example, my husband, who wrote one article, now gets beer mail for Hey Beautiful because he wrote one article on the on the block.
You can just
And
add
yet
my
you
address to that.
I don't know. I mean, I open it. It's my mail. It's to
Right.
the beautiful. It's for me. But his name is on the box. So it's
Got it.
Well, we talked a little bit about that earlier, right? We talked about this natural kind of because we've been a male dominated society. We talked about this inclination to think that the male is like the leader, and that's not always accurate. As a matter of fact, obviously Jessica is the craft beer leader in her home, right? And Kathy is the craft beer leader in her home, and Zuri is the craft beer leader in her home for the past month, and so it's pretty awesome.
Oh, come on.
Shots
I
fired.
just mean the past month
The gloves came off.
with her other half right now.
It's been a year.
Right, yeah.
Oh, a year. Oh, then I'm
Been a
sorry.
year.
Then I'm sorry. Let's edit that out. It's been a year.
I'm not editing
sorry.
any of that up.
I can be embarrassed,
Shit,
but for the
say
past
that.
year, I'm sorry, sir. So I know that that's part of the. I'm
you can't
I'm
always-
like trying to dig myself out.
Hey, let me. Look, you can't always
Do you
force
even
it.
know about beer?
I don't know anything about beer.
But now we talked about naturally and creating environments and stuff. But sometimes when a brewery does things to not force it, but even try to support it, it doesn't even always really go really well. What is it? Threes Brewing up in Brooklyn did this summer. It was what was it called? Gender neutral. Beer called Gender Neutral, and the marketing blew up in their face and went south online very, very fast. Even though their intention was to raise awareness to inequality in certain areas, and in the industry, it exploded in their face and got really negative really fast on
It's
them.
not hard to imagine why, though. I mean, because beer isn't gender neutral in itself. Like, it doesn't have...
It doesn't
It
have any-
itself doesn't have
anatomy, it's
the
not
label may, but the
gendered.
beer itself does not.
No, marketing
Exactly.
it can be gendered, but beer is not. It's a beverage.
Exactly what I'm getting at. Exactly
Yeah.
what I'm getting at. As that exploded in their face, not for the reasons you're describing. I mean, the way people explode on things online, which is not always terribly rational. So, like, and we talked about this a little bit in the previous episode. It's like when it's forced, it goes in ways that aren't always planned as well. What's that? We got a new bottle we're gonna open?
Yeah, what are we opening up now? I'm actually
I
excited
have
about
not
this.
tried this one. I'm
I'm
excited.
more excited about the label than I am the beer, which is sad.
Brolo from Monday night, right?
We did. We poured the hand Brolo from Monday night,
like
and then we
the
Han Brolo from Monday night, and then we also
summary of
poured the purple
We did it
punch
all.
from
Dare you
Highway.
go to
I like
Dragon
that.
Fest next year
I
and
love,
say
I love
like a
the
story.
labels.
Han Solo?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
That's
I'm,
awesome.
That's not going to go well.
I'm not.
just
So
keep
I'm
it-
surprised they don't have a
Easy,
letter in the
straight
mail
to
from
the simple.
Disney
Right.
from implying any character name.
Well, there's
from,
no lightsabers on there.
I will say
There are
that
lightsabers
There
on
are
the
actually.
top.
There are
No.
lightsabers. They're
Those are
light up
those are like-
sticks
Those are
Light
like
up sticks.
savers.
with handles.
Those
Yes.
are light savers. Life savers.
we did also open up Purple Punch from Highwire Brewing, and we all had the same look around the
I
table.
thought it was pretty good.
It's incredibly sour, though. Let's
didn't
be
think it was
real.
that
It's not
sour?
It's tart.
It's
It's-
tart.
it's
I would
tart.
say it's
Oh, it's
tart.
tart.
You're
It's
right.
not as tart as like this Love Child number
That is
7.
actually accurate.
So we
I like
had
that,
one
though.
last week, and ooh, my taste buds
It's
were like,
super
woo.
tart.
I really
what I
like
like
that
that
high
though
wire.
with is
Now
like
high
a-
wire is
a
good.
little,
They do
they
stuff
do
a
great
little.
stuff.
Yeah, this is blackberries, blueberries, and
some of that,
boysenberries. And as it notes on the can, it
yeah.
does contain alcohol because
maybe
it says
like a
Purple
little
Punch.
dash.
No,
And they
this
want to
is
make sure that
Something
nobody
sweet, like little lemonade
gets
or
that
something.
wrong.
It's so tart.
The ATL.
So we are drinking the
almost like
second
designed
self.
to
And
be-
how do you, Zuri, how do you say this? Because I wondered that myself.
ATL.
ATL. And I want to make notice of that
ATL.
because it's A-T-ale. So it's ATL, which obviously we're in Atlanta, and that signifies obviously the ATL. And what's cool about the can is normally it also has the same, like it has some of the characteristics of Atlanta with the peach and the Ferris wheel and the second self beer and the Capitol building. But these cans are pretty awesome too because they are the Pride cans. We're celebrating Pride here in Atlanta this weekend.
Yeah.
These are special edition Pride cans, so they're rainbow colored, which is pretty awesome. So I'm actually glad that she brought these because I wanted one of these cans myself to match my All Y'all shirt that I just got from Bitter Southerner.
Yeah, that goes in the collection.
Yep.
That's a great can.
It is a great can. So I'm going to save one of these cans and put it on my desk at work.
It started as a joke because I was like, let's put a rainbow on a can. And they were like,
Huh,
And then they
funny.
like did it a few months later, and I was like, "Oh, I wasn't serious, but cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited
They
now."
like you. They really like you.
I ended up at an episode of Celtic Woman that way. My wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday,
Whoa.
and I said, I want to go to Celtic Woman. And don't get me wrong, I love Celtic Woman, but I didn't really.
We're talking about the singers, right?
The singers.
Okay.
I wasn't really serious about going to see them, and what I didn't know is that she actually went and bought me tickets to see them at the Fox Theater. And then when that night, I said, I was just joking. She goes, what? Well, we were there now, and they filmed the live show. So Celtic Woman. That's
So
like
what
a secret that I just let out to the world, that I have a Celtic woman and kind of affection.
So historically, there are a lot of backwards ass thoughts that people have had about women and alcohol in general. What are some of the nuttiest ones you've heard?
Crickets.
Crickets?
Can you give an example? Because I'm kind
Yeah.
of like drawing a blank here.
Well, your point around
Oh, like the
them
one
not
that
being gender specific.
Oh, like the one that we received on Facebook about Abby the Holy Goats can't brew good beer because it's brewed by women.
There's certainly, obviously, an absolutely stupid thing to say.
That I only hire women because it's a woman-owned brewery.
That's
When-
crazy.
Which I know is not true.
That's
Which
not true.
half my staff is men.
Do you also hate men?
Do you hate them?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame you if you do. They're assholes.
Just the ones who put up.
Hashtag
my brother-
This podcast
Just the
will
ones
have an
who
E
put-
next to it.
My
Most
brother's
of
one of
them
my
do.
best friends. Come on.
Most of them do.
No. I do not hate men.
No, we're talking about the E next to the episode.
Yeah.
But-
Explicit?
It will be.
I can
It
drop
is
some
now.
F-bombs. You want me to drop some
It's
F-bombs?
explicit now, so we might
You
as well
drop
go
whatever
for
you
it.
want. I
Drop it
want
like
you to be
it's hot.
comfortable.
We were talking about blow-up dolls before we all started.
I want you to be.
Thanks to Jessica.
Strike it from the record. I
We were
did
talking
not
about
say
blow-up
that.
dolls and drones.
No.
I just want you to be comfortable.
I missed that whole
horrible.
thing.
See, the thing is, you have to say the bad ideas so you can get to the good ones. That's how marketing works.
That is right.
Got to get all the
Gotta
bad
throw it
ideas
out.
It's called a
out
brainstorm.
first to get to the
Brainstorm
good ones.
session.
You don't
There are
get to
no
the good
bad ideas, just
if
bad
you stop
people.
at the bad ones, you never get to the good ones. So strike that. That's you can clap at that blow up doll comment because I'm absolutely not going to.
No, I think you need to keep that one in there.
So,
I didn't say that.
so what would be blind spots that Jason and I may have? Some things we may not understand about the reality of being a woman and interfacing with the craft beer community.
You can start.
I can
I mean,
cut out silence.
I can
too.
go all day about
I can
this.
delete silence in a snap. It's easy. So you think.
I think the biggest thing is just representation. Like, mostly when you see a lot of breweries, it's like beardy white boys. It's definitely the beardy white boys club.
Sorry.
And I joke and I call my coworkers the beardy boys. But, I think representation matters, and there aren't a lot of black women brewers out there, and
Well, there's not many black people.
there's
in-
not many black people brewing, period.
Or women. So you're like way
Or even like
back in the
queer. That just like a whole nother level
I mean,
of just
queer,
like
you're-
minority black.
I was
I'm just
check
like a
out all
triple
these
threat.
flags here if you really want to.
So if there was
But
a map of the brewers in the country, that corner would be just
we have a
you.
large,
It's just Zuri.
we have a large
The Zuri
majority
corner.
of them in this room right now. Actually,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
I love it.
Which is great, but we talked about this on the last episode. We talked about blacks and craft beer. And Joel brought up some really good points about how we change this dynamic. And he mentioned that we make sure that we're hiring the right people, right? And so one of the things that I noticed the other day was I took a video of our bottling line, and in the video I noticed that there were actually 2 black guys and a gal on the bottling line, which I thought was. For where I'm at is a really good step in the right direction. But honestly, these are things that you have to be conscious of and decisions that you have to make as a company. And that's why Joel mentioned that he's starting an intern program where they actually kind of focus on this.
Right.
But you do have to work on that diversity from within. It doesn't just happen, right? And so I think that, but even more above and beyond just offering jobs, if there are no other women in your brewery and you have a job that's open, how apt are they to take that job, right? If there's not very many other women there, probably not very high, right?
I will actually say this, because we are female owned. I probably see a lot more female applicants for positions in the brewery, not just in marketing or front of house kind of thing.
That's interesting.
I actually see a lot for back of house because they feel comfortable applying for something like that, where I've had a couple of them come through that say, I don't feel comfortable applying for X brewery.
Well, who wants to be the only one? Like, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And
right?
I mean, I don't know if like Second Self before you started had any other women on the line. So I mean, packaging is always the first step that you always get to, and considering we're still draft only, we're expecting to be bottling 4 weeks. Exciting stuff.
Exciting announcements, breaking news.
It's still I'm bringing everyone in from the tasting room, marketing department, sales team. They're all helping bottling first time. So yeah, it's I see a lot more women applying to my place, whereas if I talk to another brewery, they don't see that.
Mm-hmm. You think it's because they figure their odds of getting through the past the round file?
No, I think it's more they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable. They feel safe. When you think about women in craft brewing, or even if you think about women drinking craft beer, there's a stigma associated with that.
They just like the fruit beers.
And I want to know what that stigma is to you. Like, what do you view that stigma is?
I don't like beer, but I'll drink a Blue Moon.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
I drink wine. I'm a wine drinker.
I'm a wine drinker.
I've heard that, actually.
And you know what? Right? We've done a lot of our marketing towards that. We market as a wine alternative. I mean, Belgian beer as a rule is very deep and complex, just like wine.
Right.
So our Ghost in the Garden, I actually brewed that for my partner who hates beer.
Can you tell everybody what that is, the Ghost in the Garden? Ghost
in the Garden is an elderflower saison. So it's a traditional it's a higher in alcohol saison at 7.2. It's brewed in the Belgian style. It's a light blonde color brewed with lots of elderflower. And the elderflower is most known for Saint Germain, which is sitting on the shelf right behind me. Mm-hmm. It smells just like Saint Germain on the nose, but it drinks more like a champagne when you drink it, because the bubbles are super tight in it, and it's super dry because we use 80 pounds of honey in it. To dry the hell out of it. That's going to be
super dry.
So you don't get any of those flavors, the honey through it, but you get that super dryness. And it's when women come in and they're like with their boyfriends or with their husbands, I don't like beer. We'll try this one. And they end up loving it.
Yeah, so you see like from the outside, the stereotype being that women don't generally like or drink beer,
but I don't buy it.
You know, it's just finding the right flavor profile that's appealing to each individual.
Well, there's a gateway. You need a gateway beer. Everybody.
I think everyone's
something.
Gateway beer and craft beer was Blue Moon.
Exactly.
Mine was Blue Moon too.
Or Guinness, or like something that just kind of exposes you to like, whoa, it's not evil. Like, because there's no physical difference between a female's palate and a male's palate. There's no difference there. Like exposure to these flavor profiles, you know.
Historically, though, that's not true, and there's some research to indicate that women actually have a better palate than men do. Just
we can actually taste
fair, totally fair.
You're definitely smarter than men.
Totally fair. I'm just saying it's not an anti-beer palate.
Sure,
no, it's definitely not an anti-beer palate.
We just don't like the shit you drink.
No, it's just me. I drink. Hey, woman, I drink good shit.
And I would say that women are not just strictly pro wine. I guess is kind of
that's what I'm kind of getting at. Is that
we're pro pleasure, and
exactly.
so
but we're bringing over
on the same page here.
I say,
but it's exposure because you come up, you got some dad who thinks, well, girls don't drink beer. Here, try this wine cooler when you're a kid, rather than here, son, have a beer. Because you got some misogynistic dad.
I will say this though, a lot of the marketing that you see,
not entirely, but in general, that's the way.
But here's a really interesting statistic.
I had one.
Here's a really interesting statistic. If you go to every major brewery in the United States, craft brewery,
right,
ask them who makes up their tasting panel.
Ooh, good question.
It's women.
It is?
The majority are women.
We need a tasting panel.
I gotta go.
So it's an interesting thing
replay
because
my
they've done all
Dogfish
these
Head Beer
studies
Wars.
about bitterness and like your predisposition to sensitivity to bitterness, and that your genes may affect whether you like bitterness or
flavors.
not, and that kind of thing. So the IPA trend, right, is very established. It's very clear. We have data on that. But you know, for our brewery and for Abbey of the Holy Goats, who focus more on Belgian styles,
Right.
you know, it's interesting that our top sellers are really 2 out of 3 Belgian style beers. They're not IPA based.
Right.
So an IPA is in that mix, but our top seller is based off of Belgian style. Two of them are. So we have a Belgian triple, which is super dry, like Kathy's beer that everyone loves, and then a Belgian double style inspired.
Belgians, it's just a really great flavor profile. Their yeasts have matured into this real fruitiness, and they've got what seems like big carbonation. So it's like this, like really assault on the palate in a very different way than other regions or countries bring. Like, you know, Germany, their yeasts typically, other than Pilsner, are really sweet, but they're dense. They got like this dense flavor to them, and I
Like
love,
a bready.
yeah, I love them for it. It's delicious.
It's good.
And you know, the UK, they love the shit out of some sweet beer,
Yeah, for real.
right? So I mean,
Uncarbonated beer.
and uncarbonated. They love their warm cask,
Yeah, they're
Cask beer. Excuse
half
me.
flat
cask beer.
cask beer,
my
cask beer.
brother-in-law's
I did, yeah, I
It's
did.
good. I love that stuff.
I was in the UK.
There's definitely a place for it.
The real cask
There
beer.
is
I like
Not Firkins.
just not.
I like
on
carbonated
this.
beer. I'm sorry.
Not Firkins casks.
not Perkins cask.
There's a huge misnomer of that
There
in
is.
America. There's a difference between a firkin and a cask. A firkin is a small barrel, a small
Right.
wooden barrel of some sort of beer, and a cask is completely different and delivered completely different as well. Non-carbonated and usually flat.
as
Have you
opposed to a
talked to
Firkin
Ellen?
cast,
No, I'm not. I should.
right? All right. So, what would you like to add? Because we're gonna after party pretty soon, and we'd like to invite you to the after parparty. So,
I wanted to
Jason, you got another question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, what are the, have you ever been in situations where you didn't feel comfortable or you didn't feel welcome? We talked a little bit about this before, because we asked this question last month, and I think it's important because that how it goes to a lot to do with the kind of environments that we create. Right?
right. So, have they not felt welcome?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say predominantly that's not been the case, especially here. You know, it's very inclusive.
That's been very cool.
I think some people actually go out of their way, men especially, to make sure that, you know, you do feel welcome, especially since we're in the minority. But that's not always the case. I would say as a general rule that people have gone out of their way to make me feel included. And I haven't encountered a ton of, you know, feelings of being left out. I mean, a little bit here and there, but mostly it's been unintentional. I can't recall a specific incident where it's been like, oh, well, you're not, you know, maybe I've just been lucky that way, but.
I've had a few instances of people just being kind of meh. So one of them was our first anniversary party. I was pouring some of our barrel-aged beers, and this guy was asking about the beers, and I gave him kind of a rundown on what the options were. And he'd asked me which one I would drink, and I told him which one I would drink. But then he kind of followed it up with like, oh, well, do you even really like beer? Like, do you work here? And it was just like, yeah, I like gave you like a full rundown and like told you which one I liked and why I liked it. So like, why would you assume I A, don't like beer, or like B, like I don't actually work here, which was kind of off-putting to be like
Like
oh,
you would
cool.
just help
Like,
the catering help?
Yeah, she was like a server.
yeah, like I was just like a
Server.
server. And then I've had another instance where I was in New York with one of my friends, and we ordered the exact same beer, and they brought him a full pint, and they brought me just a little shooter to see if I liked it before I committed to it. And I was like, we ordered the same
That's
beer,
pretty
and you
blatant.
brought me a sample. Cool.
You were like, can you bring me a pitcher? Actually,
And chug it in his
Now that you
face.
say that,
You feel me, bro?
I do remember, not here, but like incidences where I've been out with a male friend or my husband, and we've ordered beers, and they'll serve him the thing that's interesting and different and like the experimental whatever, and he ordered the wheat beer or he ordered the straight up whatever. I'm like, no, I ordered it from you, and you gave him my beer. That's my beer. Give it to me.
So the server just comes back to the table and gives
and they give him
what would be considered
in the fancy glass. It's the saison or whatever.
Right.
You know, it's the funky Brett whatever.
the adventurous selection.
Yeah. And it's not for me. Or like at festivals we were talking about earlier, you know, if you're there as the rep, as the brewery, sometimes the default is to assume that if there's a male volunteer pouring the beer, that the woman who's standing next to the table in all the branded gear isn't by default the representative of the brewery who can answer all your questions about what the style is.
That would be those would be instances of stereotyping, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessary exclusion. It's not really to your point, to your question, but
It's fine.
No, it's exact question that we asked. Next, and now that you mentioned that, next weekend I'm going to be serving for our brewery at a local festival in Decatur, and I'm actually going to. April will be there. My wife will be there to help me, and I'm actually going to pay attention to that because I really am curious as to know what that looks like. And I'll actually pay attention to it
But if you know Jason, he's going to pour heavy for all the women, the African Americans, and the gays that you recognize. You're going to be like, here's a little extra for you.
I do. I mean, you know me. I am an equal opportunity pourer.
I know.
And but honestly, like I will pay attention to that, and I'll actually take note of how they treat me versus April, and store that in the back of my head so that we can learn from that. Because again, I think that a lot of this stuff happens and people just don't really pay attention, and it happens every day and people don't pay attention. It's like what we talked about race last month.
Right.
A lot of it happens and you
don't even realize it's happening.
You don't even realize it's happening.
No,
If
it's
you're not paying
systemic.
attention-
And if you're not willing to discuss it, how can you expose it and improve? Like,
And if you're part of the group that's not being discriminated against, like you're especially just not going to notice
they're
it.
not going to see it. They're not going to notice it. They think everything is fine.
Because you're benefiting from it.
I will say this.
Exactly.
The worst experience I actually had was this last year at CBC, which is the Craft Brewers Conference. And it was walking around in the expo. I didn't take any of my staff to CBC this year. It was just me. So I was in there by myself and walking around. And besides being asked, little lady, can I help you?
What?
That's crazy.
Or being completely
You have a big
ignored.
hat on, like 10 gallons.
Yeah. I do like cowboy.
I mean, we're stereotyping.
But besides that, I was either completely ignored or they didn't have anything to say to me, and I was looking at multi-million-dollar equipment.
You're like, I'm the owner of a brewery here.
Right, and I'm like, and you can't even give me the time of day because I am a woman. Yet this guy comes by that doesn't own a brewery, that's an assistant or cellarman, and you're going to give him, hey, I'm going to give you the complete rundown of the entire equipment.
So let me
He
ask
can't name a single investor that helps his brewery out.
Right.
the other thing is like frequently being confused for other women who work for
Oh, are you the wife of the owner?
who work at the brewery.
Really?
Like
I can see that.
interchangeable, like
Yeah.
even if your look is completely different, like it is.
Isn't that a pickup line?
No, it's
You
like,
don't have to be that
oh,
nice. You
did
can-
we talk about the thing? Yeah.
Hey, let me
No,
ask
that
you
wasn't
this,
me.
because this actually brings up a great point. A couple of great questions that I have. One is, so you're a brewery owner who happens to be a female. How many other breweries in the state are female owned?
One.
Aren't you the only one?
It's still-
Or is
There's
there
two,
another-
right?
Georgia.
There's
One's
two.
Savannah.
So no, it's in
Oh,
Augusta.
no,
It's
that's right.
Riverwatch.
Augusta. That's
Riverwatch,
right.
that's right.
So there's two in Georgia. All right, and then how many brewers do you think that you represent in this state? So how many brewers do you think are women in this state?
And you're pointing at Zuri.
So
I'm not pointing at. I'm just sorry.
there's maybe like 4 other women brewers.
So you, me, Bree.
And then Jessica, who is at Monday night. I think that her name's Jessica.
Yeah, I know there's a female brewer over there.
She used to be at Sweetwater. Now she's at Monday night.
She is at Monday night. You're right.
And I don't know of anyone else.
But the only
either.
reason I know she is over there is because of the photos, like the visibility. You go back to like just being able to see who's on staff.
Yeah, which is why, again, I find it really important actually to take those photos and capture that, because I think it's important just in general. But if you look at that, okay,
Yeah,
so
well,
there's-
how many brewers are in Georgia? We have 46. We have 46.
There are 46
46
There are
breweries.
46
open.
breweries.
There are
There are
46
20
breweries within 1 hour of Atlanta. That's the.
There
That's,
are, there are
there's
60
4 of
or
us.
so in Georgia total.
that's
There's
right.
45 or so within.
But that includes brew pubs.
Yeah,
that
that counts-
mine includes brew pubs.
No, you might be right. That's
So
a
I
little
have
blurry.
46 within 1 hour.
Brew pubs count.
They do
They're
count.
still
Count.
brewing.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
Lagers,
And there are
Wrecking Bar.
30 licenses applied for.
That's
30 or
right.
40 right now.
JR is awesome.
Incredible, and some of our best beers coming out of brew pubs in the state. But at Cherry Street, Cherry Street won as best brewer in the country in the U.S. Beer Open. So when I think about the amount of brewers in this state, which is probably 60 plus, right? Obviously, that number is not very high in terms of women brewery owners and women brewery cellarmen to brewers. Because honestly, most cellarmen end up on some sort of path to brewing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So-
that I know of.
So, as I said
And I think
earlier,
we should lump Urban Tree in there too.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's
Yeah,
a
I would
few
agree
more.
with that actually.
There aren't very many
There's
cider.
Because the co-owner is a woman and they have
I would agree with that.
yeah, they've got some awesome people over there.
They do Sam.
We're doing
And the cider is
collab
rad
with
as
them.
hell.
I'm gonna throw this out there because we are expanding, and I'll be hiring 5 to 6 people in our back in production. So the more women that want to put in an application,
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know demographics of our listener base, to be honest. You don't get- Yeah,
Facebook.com/Pink
podcasts don't give you
Society.
very good stats. All you get is
What's going on
downloads.
there?
All you get
No,
is
no.
downloads. But
No,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I'm
but-
actually hiring a head brewer because at this point I don't have time.
yeah.
Yeah,
I hate to say that because my passion is definitely around brewing, but
Every founding brewer eventually comes to that crossroads, don't they?
you know what? The interesting thing
That's
about
probably
me
true. I'd
is
say.
as far as a brewery goes, I didn't have a business partner starting this brewery. Reformation had 11 people that started it.
We have, the core group and then investors come on regularly. So it's like,
In Second Self was 2 guys that started it. I didn't have anyone, and it was so incredibly daunting.
Right.
I imagine it's still daunting.
yeah, even with investors, it's daunting.
I sleep maybe
There are more work.
3 to 4 hours a night, but I really need to step back from the brewing section at this point and really focus on the business. As much as I hate to say that,
Well, it's got to be managed.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, at least you're willing to admit that. There's a lot of breweries I know that they run into that problem and they're not really willing to admit that,
I would love to brew every day, and that's all I do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, my boss is kind of looking at doing the same thing pretty soon. He's looking at promoting one of us to head brewer. I mean, right now, my coworker Austin and I do all of the brewing, like first shift, second shift. Like we do all of the brewing, and he'll step in occasionally, but it's just the 2 of us brewing. We're slowly training a 3rd guy, and then we're hopefully going to have a 4th person by the end of the year. And he wants to step back and elect one of us to be the head brewer.
And it's just me and my assistant brewer, who is also my cellarman. So he's pretty much my go-to for everything. But yeah, I need definitely more staff, especially we're going from a 7-barrel system to a 30. Yeah.
Wow. I'll talk about expansion. That's a huge expansion. I will say that you folks, because I was going to say you guys, you folks have
Ladies?
You've done it. You ladies.
You peeps.
It's more than ladies. I said folks because it's more than ladies. But you have done an amazing job with such a very small number. Because honestly, I've been hearing about you guys and on the radar and stuff since you opened, and actually since before you opened, before the tap room opened. So what you've been able to do in such a small time with such a small number of people is actually pretty impressive. So I'm excited for what the future holds for you. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Our first barrel aged sour should be out by December.
There you go.
What?
December, you heard it here first.
That is right in my wheelhouse.
Flanders Red.
Flanders Red, one of my favorites. I do love them. I love me a Flanders Red.
Keep opening cans.
I know we
got going on.
So we just opened up.
I'm gonna drink that.
We just opened up. We opened up the.
This is pretty good.
Jude.
Yeah, I like that.
We opened up the
Gin and Jude's pretty good.
The Jude.
Gin and Jude. Put a little gin in there.
Gin and Jude. We're doing Gin and Jude. We opened up the Jude from Reformation. Then we opened up the Burial and Jay Wakefield collaboration, the Cosmic and Divine.
Nice.
And then last we opened the Alchemist Stirk Wit. And again, we opened up the Purple Punch from Highwire. And now we're sitting pretty on a lot of really tasty beer. What's been really cool about tonight's beer menu is that there's a lot of variety. Obviously, we've had sours and IPAs and pale ales and stouts and Belgian wits. And this Jude is actually a Belgian style triple. This is one of the original beers that they launched with, I think. And it's actually one of my favorites from them. Jude and Orin are my two favorites from Reformation. This is actually one of them. And then, of course,
It'll sneak up on you.
It will sneak up on you. What is the ABV on this?
9.2.
Oh, Jesus. No wonder. I never knew that, and maybe that's why
That's probably why you
caused me
like it.
trouble. Actually. Maybe that's why I like it so
Wonder
much.
why I never finished all six.
Exactly. I wonder why that snuck up on me.
Hey,
But yeah.
Hey, Jude.
So obviously we want to thank you for your time and for joining the conversation. We Wayne and I are honestly here to learn, and we struck up this conversation about diversity in craft beer because we realized there was a lot we needed to learn, and there wasn't anybody else in the space having these tough, hard conversations about things that we want to know about and that we want to get better at as people and humans. And so thank you for joining the conversation. Thank
Thank you very much.
Is there anything else that you want to say before we finish up and do a little after party?
It is exciting to be here with the two of you, I have to say. I was so excited about your opening before it even happened. I was like, oh my God, a woman-owned brewery. That's like the most exciting thing that's ever happened in my life, because I was looking, like that was my goal in life, was to find where are they at? Where are my women at? Why are they not? Where are they? And
Gives
then,
you time.
the more digging you do, you're like, oh, they're everywhere, and it's super exciting. Like, oh my God, I was so excited. Like, you get on the other side of it and you expect that sort of excitement about finding your people in the same sphere that you're excited about present, and being like, yeah, it's so cool. Like we can nerd out and be excited about the same thing. And I think that's what craft beer is really showcasing, is like people are just excited to be excited about the same thing.
Right.
Even if we have a lot of other things that are not in common, like we're super excited about what's like here, and like we can talk about this, and this can be the connecting point as the thing in the glass.
Sure.
And then we have more conversations about like the other things that maybe we don't get. So I'm excited. I just was like so excited
That's
to be
awesome.
here, and just like,
You weren't as
great.
excited as I was, honestly.
I don't know.
Honestly,
Here we go.
you weren't as excited as I.
All right.
It reminds me a lot
you
of.
win. You're more, yeah.
I am actually. I was more excited. I'll just say, but there's no contest here. But I'll say that
Measure that.
one of the things that Eric Jackson
Excitement.
said on our last
Excitement.
podcast was
taller.
one of the things that happened at Shelton Fest was there was this. I happened upon this large group of blacks in craft beer that were all kind of gathering together, and they've come from all over the country. And I thought it was so cool because honestly, because obviously they were the minority in the room. I mean, it's not, I don't have to be a rocket scientist to say that, but they were the minority in the room. But can you imagine getting together with a minority that you're a very small part of, and that you all have this same common denominator in craft beer, and being like, I love craft beer too. Let's have this conversation. And for them, it was like such a special moment. And then we talked about it on the podcast. They talked about how much it meant to them. I love that you said what you said, honestly, because it reminded me of what Eric Jackson said about being at Shelton Fest and being a part of that group. It's like, these are my people. Mm-hmm. And I feel not only welcome, but I feel glad to be with my people. And I respect that mad, because I know it seems odd because I'm with my people everywhere, right? But at the same time, like, I can also just respect that I spent a lot of
Beardy
time.
boys.
I know, beardy boys.
No, it's bearded bros.
But
They're boys.
but on the scale of
They're
like that
nice.
better.
They're
but on the
boys.
scale of all the people that I hang out with, I'm actually part of a very, very small minority of people who are this geeky about craft beer. When I talk about like my favorite version of Cantillon, they have no idea what a Cantillon is, nor what a goose is, nor what a lambic is, nor what a craft beer is. And so,
I do, and you're making me thirsty.
So I understand it on a very small scale, and you guys can understand it on a much larger scale. So I'm glad that this can be a...
Well, to that point, when I was at CBC this year and going to the Pink Boot Society meeting, it is very liberating because you don't have to worry about, hey, what is this person going to think about what I say? You don't. There's no judgment, and you can actually, as you said, geek out about it. And most people don't think of a woman being a little bit nerdy about beer, if not a hell of a lot nerdy about beer. So, I mean, I could go on for hours about yeast profiles.
I would love to know about
I
that.
just want to sit and listen.
I want to sit and listen. myself.
But you know what? But if I say that in a normal conversation, people are like, well, what do you really know about it? Which is to me is like, I've been studying about yeast for 15 years. I mean, I don't get why you don't think I know something about it. But if I go to Pink Boot Society, it's like, hey, tell
They
me
just
more.
accept it.
Yeah.
Tell me,
There's no
that's-
second guessing, no mansplaining, no like, did you like hear that from your husband or something?
Right. And I'm like, I have a husband.
There's a lot of explaining that doesn't have to happen. Like people just get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell me, you've name dropped Pink Boot Society a couple of times.
It's an awesome society.
Explain what, unless it's a secret.
No.
No.
It's not
Do
secret.
it. Don't
You don't know
explain
about
it.
this? You don't know about it?
Do you not know
I'm
the
not
code
familiar
word?
with it.
So
I'm not familiar with it.
Terry Ferrendorf
I promise
is
there are
the
people who are
founder, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And she started this. She's a brewer, or was a brewer,
Was a
and now
brewer.
is a maltster, correct? Or is retired from maltstering? I don't know.
She's a consultant at this point.
okay. Anyway,
She did a lot of things.
Res-
She's done a lot of
She's
things.
done a hell of a lot.
Yeah, she
Productive
found
Worn a lot of
genius.
hats.
So she was a
Yeah.
server?
She
Don't
was a
make me hit you.
servant.
I'm just kidding.
Jason, you're going to undo all the
sorry.
goodwill you've built.
Anyway,
Forgive me. Carry on.
Yeah. So Terry Ferrendorf, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. She started the whole organization. I don't know exactly when. It was a while ago.
It was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
It was-
It's been around
yeah,
for a long
it's about
time.
20
Okay.
years.
She was a brewer.
Maybe not early 90s.
We have the internet. Keep
I mean,
Yeah,
that,
keep
that
going.
level of
Hey,
specificity
Google.
is not really what I'm after, but the general explanation of what.
Yeah, so it's
the
a society to support brewers specifically,
But
and
women-
then just
women who work in craft
general,
beer or women in
general
general?
in the
Right.
professional industry of craft beer.
but with
Got
an
it.
emphasis on
Great.
With the emphasis on
brewers.
brewing, but like servers or like tasting room
Marketing,
managers,
right.
marketing,
Or-
they're also welcome.
Yeah.
Like,
Great.
Right.
Even
Okay.
industry supporters like malting.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything
Any-
related to the industry.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to
join.
think that it is, people who are not familiar with it, to think that it's either like some kind of secret society.
No, it's not secret.
Or
No,
a
no, no.
Facebook group. Like,
Yeah,
this is a
you-
legitimate thing.
It's a real
Do
thing.
it
My
justice.
biggest problem is you have to wear pink boots for the
Yes,
photo,
I don't
and
like pink.
I fucking
I'm
hate
not,
pink.
I hate
I'm not a
pink.
fan of pink, but I'm not gonna lie. So I was online. I was on
buy the pink
I was
boots?
on the
Did you buy
Facebook
them?
page, and it was like
They have
the
a link.
pair of pink boots
know.
for $13.
Oh, I mean,
So I just bought
It
them.
was
So I
cheap.
just bought
I mean,
them.
at least it was
They
cheap.
they came in last week. I'm actually gonna wear them to
man.
Sweetwater for
Oh,
my
that'll
lab
be
thing.
funny. That'll be
Just
fun. Yeah,
just because
absolutely.
I
like
can't wait to see this.
They're
I
photo.
gotta do it.
You gotta
That'll
And
be
I was
cute.
like, that's so cheap, and there's steel toe and everything.
I know.
Wow.
It's so hard
I
to
just
find
gotta
women's
get it.
steel
I just
toe
got it.
boots.
I'll send you the link. I was like, I gotta
All the
get
steel
it.
toe boots are like ugly as hell, or they're
I just
men
like-
boots.
My boss got
No?
me set
Did you
on
find
those
some good ones?
composite
I found
boots,
some
and they
leather ones
just
that are
feel
awesome.
so
and
good.
comfy. I mean,
Those-
Doc Martens makes
those-
some amazing ones.
The one
Oh,
thing
yeah?
I don't like about
Alright.
these boots is they actually feel like
I can't
rain
find boots I
Oh,
like
they're
that
just
are
like
steel toe.
gumboots. Like,
Yeah, they
love
cut real
Galoshes.
high and they're
Yeah,
like
yeah.
galoshes. I can
Keen
trim them
too?
shorter, but
I
like,
got a wife and a daughter. There are
Chemical,
pink boots in my
waterproof.
house.
the whole bit.
Yeah.
I'm not-
Okay.
I mean, all kinds of pink.
I don't wear rubber
cowgirl
boots.
There's
You don't.
I only wear
rain
leather.
boots. It's just
So
I thought
they're
about the
pink
Doc Martens
everything.
because I know
Now that I
they're
think
steel
about
toe.
it,
yeah,
I was just at Disney.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love Disney.
So
My annual pass just
So
expired.
it's not secret. It's totally public.
Yes.
got
It's
you.
pbs.org or something like that.
PBS.
PBS seems
I don't
like
think
that
that's-
seems like a
It's
really
Pink
broadcasting
Society.org.
I think it's Pink Boots Society.
Okay, well, the
can just spell it
acronym is
out.
the same. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I can't look because my phone just died. But
But
That
anyway, there's a
happens.
Facebook group too, and so we share.
best practices.
Yeah,
A lot of job postings.
Okay, cool.
industry questions. Like,
So if you're a woman listening to this podcast,
You should check it out. And you work in brewing.
And they
in the brewing industry.
offer a lot of scholarships. So
Right,
there's
that's the
one
other
that
cool
I'm
thing.
thinking about applying to next time they put it up. They do a lot of international scholarships, which is really cool. So one that just the application deadline just passed was to spend like a week in Germany to do like a lot of beer tasting. It was like beer and bratwurst or something like
Right.
that. I'm
Sounds
like,
terrible.
man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And they
Might as
pay
well go to
for
Iraq.
like
That's a scholarship?
everything.
yeah,
And then another one they have going on right now
They have it in
is with
mail?
the Beer Savvy
No.
to do your Cicerone certification.
It was worth asking.
So the Cicerone certification.
Happens as a part of the scholarship?
There is another scholarship. They post like
Yeah.
3 scholarships
amazing.
per
Yeah.
quarter.
You have
That's
to qualify
really
for it.
encouraging. I mean, it encourages...
It encourages women
participation.
in the industry.
I like that,
so.
actually.
That's excellent.
So
I'm
speaking of
jealous,
that,
but
yeah.
I like
Let's
that.
speak about
And
that.
the website is pinkbootssociety.org.
Thank you.
So tell me about this. I noticed that somebody posted it the other day, and I actually thought, "Hey, we should do that at Jekyll." So neither one of you should do it because I want to do it. But I thought about this. What is the women's pint nights out?
No, we've already done them.
Girls Pint
Girls
Out.
night out, pint out.
You don't
Girls
even know what it's called.
Pints.
Girls,
Girls
Pint
Pint
It's like
Out.
girls' night out, but girls' pint out. It's not that hard to
See,
figure out.
there I am being uneducated. But I want to do that. Like I would love to do that because again,
No, you should.
I'm actually
There's also G.A.L.S, which is the
Georgia
Georgia
Ale
Ale and Lager
Lager
Sirens.
Okay.
And they preceded the Georgia. So nationally, there's a Girls Pint Out organization, and there's local chapters. And then Georgia Girls Pint Out, or Georgia Ales and Lager Society, I apologize, is G.A.L.S, and that's Sirens. Sorry, not Society. You're right.
I think a mutual friend of ours posted it, Gina Silva, who actually used to be the taproom manager at Jekyll Brewing.
She's with Top Golf now.
She's with Top Golf now, but she's a dear friend of mine and somebody who I incredibly respect. Again, used to be the taproom manager at Jekyll. She posted it out, and I was
Right.
like, "Hey, we should do that."
Yeah, Samantha
Samantha Nueve
is now.
That's right.
Yeah, so we did this year at the brewery. We did Women Brewing Day.
Okay.
Women in Brewing.
Is it the International Women's Brew Day?
Yeah.
It was like March 15th
They do every
or
year.
something.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we had gals and
Girls Pint Out.
Yeah,
And that's a
at the
Pink
brewery.
Boot Society led
right.
national day.
We
just
didn't
so
do
you know.
the beer that everyone did though.
Yeah, there's sort of like a style chosen every year.
So, but we had a brew beer that day. So
Yeah. That
we
makes
brewed
sense.
that beer, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, we had about 50 women out, and
It's fun.
that would normally never get to see that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And be participating in that. I mean,
Or
hey,
going to, like, a
more
paid
power to them.
class
Hey,
or
come
something
scoop
at, like,
all
Beer
the
It's
Chili.
totally
grain you
exciting.
want.
I have to say that I participated in that prior to even being in the industry side as a beer lover, and I got to go to Wrecking Bar and like help brew a beer, and it was freaking exciting.
Wow, cool.
Awesome. Actually.
It's all fun
Yeah,
and
they
games
get
till you
a
get a
good
grain
space.
out.
Yeah.
I mean, we dug it out.
can.
Scoop some grain.
Or you have to
Got some-
can.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was,
Turns out I was
That's
just
not near
carrying
as much
heavy
fun.
bags and cleaning things all
right?
day.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually, Jason from Orpheus asked me to come help him can one day, and I was like, "Oh, sure, I'll come help you can." And like
Never
15
again.
minutes later, I was like, "Okay, I'm pretty much done at this point." Do I have to? Can I go? Is it time?
How many more hours is it?
So before we finish up, I just want to ask you one more question before we go into our after party, and that is, what are you most excited about individually about craft beer right now? What are you most excited about?
Like personally?
Yeah, personally.
Or
Yep.
like huge, big scale things?
Yep. Just like personally, what are you excited about in craft beer?
I'm excited about finishing at the American Brewers Guild.
Of course you are.
It's been too damn long and
that's
it's so
honest.
expensive. I'm ready to be done.
Okay.
Because these classes are like no joke. So I started in January, and from January until the end of July, I had like 6 hours of DVDs to watch, a weekly quiz, and then the course comes with 8 books to read. So I spent like 12 hours a week doing like beer work after coming home from my full-time job. And that was just, I'm ready to be done.
ready to be
It's
done.
still in the back of my mind. Like I haven't had to do all of that
Total
work,
immersion.
but it's still just like, oh man, I'm
But
ready
that's
to
actually
be done.
pretty cool hearing that it's that like intensive to me, honestly, because it's more than just like a read a book and.
should
It is very intensive. They send you like
We'll document
52
it.
DVDs to watch.
It's hard. I'm excited about 2018. You know, you were talking about earlier how sometimes you just throw an idea out there and you don't really think anyone's listening, and then suddenly it sticks and they're like, oh yeah, that is a good idea. And you never really intended for it to be a real idea in the first place. So I'm excited about 2018 and for some of those, like, oh, I didn't think anyone was listening ideas to finally stick and see where we go from there.
So ideas that you've given. To the brewery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your
Where I'm like,
contributions.
well, you know, who knows? They're going to ignore this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But yeah,
No, we should do is a rainbow label.
right?
Oh, I have another one.
You don't have to cut out of the bag if you don't want it. It's all right.
So I'm excited about next year.
That's awesome.
Wow, where to start?
Everybody's looking at
I mean,
Kathy.
everybody's looking at you.
Well, we're expanding next year, so we're going to go from our little tiny 6,000 square foot brewery to a 22,000 square foot brewery, and a completely devoted 6,000 square foot to sours, traditional sours.
Yum.
So you're
Yum,
moving
yum.
out of the facility you're
No, we're
in now,
not.
or
We're
you're
just expanding.
Yeah.
We're just expanding, so we're going to take over a 16,000 square foot facility next door. We'll have outdoor space at that point, so people can come play bocce ball and
Yeah.
maybe eat some Belgian frites.
Ooh. Now you have my attention.
That
Belgian
reminds me.
waffles,
Yeah.
palm frites.
I was leaving Shelton Fest this year.
Get that mayonnaise
and a
out.
gentleman
Oh
walked
yeah,
up to me
I have some of my
and he
fries.
asked me, he said, what do Belgians put on their fries? And it seemed like a really odd,
The
random
best
question
mayo.
to ask. It
Like,
seemed
is
like a
real
really
mayonnaise,
random.
real mayonnaise.
told us
Yeah.
during
It
the
seemed
last
like a
episode.
really random question that he asked me. Hey, what do Belgians put on the fries? And I said, I had to think about it because I've never been to Belgium. So I was like, mayo. And he goes, that's right. And he pulled me this really special bottle. of
It's
this
so
passion
good.
fruit
So good.
Cantillon. And I was like,
I'm telling
I'm
you,
so
all
glad I
about
got
the
that answer
pleasure.
right. Because I'm telling you, that beer was so good. So yes, frites, Belgian frites with mayo.
And the other thing I'm really excited about for our brewery is our actual sours are coming out.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's exciting.
I'm excited
Their
about
program
That's
takes
exciting.
so long
It does.
to
It's amazing how long it
purchase
takes.
into and then
It's over a
get
year-long
delivered,
program.
age.
I mean, we
Takes
have some
several
that's going to
years.
take. It's going to not be until 2019 until they're ready.
Yeah.
So
Gotta play the long game.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
try not to.
We'll turn this into
Stay
therapy
strong.
for Kathy.
Yeah.
So tell me about your first keg.
Yeah, exactly.
Your first game.
Yeah, my first keg.
Your firkin.
My firkin.
Your first firkin.
Hey, my first firkin?
All right, we can wrap it up.
We can wrap it up. Yeah, so again, thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies, Jessica, Zuri, and Kathy for helping us out with this conversation. Thank you so much for what you added and contributed
Jessica.
to this. Thank you so much for allowing us to learn from you tonight, and we greatly appreciate it. So check these ladies out. Second Self Brewing is in Atlanta. Abbey of the Holy Goats is in Roswell. Reformation Brewing is in Woodstock. And definitely check out what they're doing.
Woodstock, Georgia, Roswell, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia.
That's right. We really appreciate what they're doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
they're doing great
participating.
work, and they deserve the
Cheers.
attention.
Yeah,
Cheers,
cheers,
guys.
cheers,
Cheers.
cheers to all of you for what you do. Thank you so much. Much love around the table, and yeah, let's after party.
We can after party or we can wrap. Either. If you have a question or something you would like us to discuss, drop us an email, sip@lastbeershow.com, or hit us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at The Last Beer Show. A reminder that we are proud members of the ABV Network. Go to abvnetwork.com to see all the amazing podcasts, or go to your podcast app of choice, search for something like The Last Beer Show, The Firewater Review, The Bourbon Daily, among others. And if you really want to have a good time, go to Instagram and follow the hashtag ABV Network Crew. There's always all kinds of stuff happening on there, and it's a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks for listening. Peace. Oh, wait. One more thing. Please do us a solid and go to iTunes, rate the show. We would be extremely grateful. Thank you very much. Thanks again for listening.